Welcome, everyone, to this podcast episode of Unspoken Words. Today is a special recording, another installation of our live chat with parents, and today we're at CommuniCamp. For this episode, we'll have a discussion on how to prepare for going back to school with children with Selective Mutism. Let's begin with some intros. So just please state your name, your child's age, and where you're from.
My name is Misty. I'm from the DC area, and my child is 9 years old.
Hi, I'm Ita. I'm from Connecticut, just an hour outside of New York, and my child is almost 4.
Hi, I'm Bria, and we're from literally 10 minutes away. So we're from Pennsylvania, and my son will be 6 at the end of October, so he'll be going into kindergarten.
Hi, I'm Navina. I'm from New Jersey, and my child is 5 years old.
Welcome, everyone, at CommuniCamp. So it's so nice to meet you. I know Misty, but I don't know all of you. So thank you so much for being here. And we're going to get started. So what I'm going to do, just to tell you guys, is talk about your question, but have some discussion about it. Interestingly enough, you guys all wrote similar questions. It's really neat to see that kind of overlap. How's CommuniCamp going for you guys, though?
Great.
Yeah?
Yeah, wonderful.
You loving it? You learning a lot?
The theme that came to me today and yesterday during their homework was I'm learning to unlearn.
Yes.
It's just so many things are habits, and just being mom is you just do things the way you always do it. And I had to really stop and think and include, I'll say her name, Divya, in a lot of the things I typically would not include her in. I just do all the time. I'm so used to doing. So I had to unlearn that and just include her, which you don't do typically.
Yeah, because you're so busy in your life.
Yeah, and I think of being someone who likes, I want to talk to people, and then so I sometimes usually take over for my son. So being like, oh, there's totally things I can do to involve him in the conversation is like really helpful as well. And unlearning, I don't have to always take that, like I don't have to be in the front, and we can do things that will help him feel comfortable to be on the front line and do things like that. So it is like an unlearning.
Yeah. I felt about it a little bit differently. I don't feel like I'm unlearning because I've been listening to you for the last 8 months. But what I have really felt so strongly is that I'm adding another full-time job to my life, which is planning out exposures all the time. When they ever happen to come up, I'm trying to include my daughter, Ayala, but I'm going to have to start planning how to do that more regularly.
So 2 things you said. One is the unlearning. You guys are going to laugh. But one of the things I do to describe this is imagine a toilet roll. A toilet roll. Paper towel, toilet paper. So imagine toilet paper. It's like literally people come to me where it's all unraveled and we have to unravel it. Like it's all bunched up and we have to unravel it to ravel it back up. And that's what a lot of families, especially the older families of older kids, because they've been doing things a certain way for so long that they have to almost unravel the toilet paper and roll it back up. And I see this all the time. So that analogy made sense to me because you are relearning habits. But the other thing I want to say to you is I see it as you're learning to integrate your child. So it does seem, and Misty, you can say this, you can understand where I'm going because we've talked about this in some ways. It's like you have to change, but it becomes much more natural as you move along in this process. So yes, you have to involve your child. If you're going to go to Target or Home Depot or go pick dinner up, take your child with you. If you're going to go to someone's house to pick up your other child at a play date, take your child with you. It becomes a way of life, and the way you question your child becomes a way of life. So what I do want to reassure you about is it actually isn't as much of a full-time job as you think. It becomes, yes, in the beginning it seems like a lot, but then that just becomes part of your life. Because if you think about it, like I'm only with a family for an hour, like for you, an hour a month. So you have to practice the skills and then unlearn and learn and tweak. So what treatment is for families is you're literally like learning new things. So your clinician, whomever you're working with, is learning about your child at that time, then translating it to you and how you integrate it into your life and how you integrate it into school and training your school. That's how it works. You come back, what's worked well, what's been challenging, tweak and move. And before you know it, this becomes so natural that you're like not needing to come much because you're learning how to bridge up and bridge down, and your child's made a lot of progress. So you don't have to work on a lot of the things you worked on in the beginning. So I do want to reassure you that it actually isn't as overwhelming as you realize. It's a lot of information now, and you have a young child. So once you start getting this kind of ball rolling, it's amazing. So Misty, what's your thoughts on that?
I think I felt the same way, and it seems almost daunting, but then you reframe the way you think about it and you see them, all of these opportunities, just daily opportunities. Oh, I need to go over to the neighbor's house to whatever, get sugar. Who does that? But okay, Leo, you're coming with me, and he may fight it once. And again, he's older, so we communicate very differently now, him being 9 versus the lady that said that about her younger child crying. And I remember those, but gosh, once you get past them, you're like, okay, that's done. So I was there, and it's a journey because I've been in it for a while, so it is a job. But like you said, you integrate it and you see all of these opportunities. Going to the store, instead of ordering the groceries, go pick up the groceries, make him go. Okay. Give him a choice in it though, in certain things. Like it starts to become part of the life and just very natural.
And educating others. So one of the things that's really important is educating your family and friends and teachers, which kind of goes along with some of your questions, is really educating them because they don't know. And what some families have said to us at camp is, my gosh, my child's doing this and this, and she's actually talking and she's made friends and she doesn't do this in school. Why is this happening here? Like, I don't get it. It's because they know what to do. And so all we need to do, I shouldn't say all we need to do, like it's so simple because it's not, but is to educate your school staff on how to do this. And we're giving you tools on what to do, but also giving you a lot of materials to share with them. So that's the great news, is that I feel like what you're feeling is you're becoming more equipped. And when your anxiety starts to go down over this, you're projecting that onto your child. So instead of nervous and like that flat affect we get, and it happens, you're starting to relax. And as your child's making progress, you're relaxing even more. And your child's sensing that confidence you guys have, and they relax. It's amazing how that works. So anyway, thank you for being here. This means so much to me to have you here, because for me, just educating parents and talking to parents is so much a part of my passion, because I'm a parent too. So I get it. And so that's why CommuniCamp is my very favorite thing in the world. Misty, your question was, what is the best strategy to get my son acclimated to his teacher? And I would say, even though Misty asked that question, all the rest of you, the 3 of you, the 4 of you all together, how do you get acclimated to your new teacher? This is an August CommuniCamp, so the theme was back to school and talking about school. And I would say one of the number one things, as soon as you know who your teacher is, you start to get connected to your teacher. Sometimes it's through email, sometimes it's sending messages, but going into the school in a nonchalant way. Like, you have younger kids, you don't have 15, 20-year-olds. So it's really much easier to just, parents are way more involved in, hey, we're going to go to the school, rather than do you want to go? Or, hey, we need to go to school, do you want to go now? And then that's fine, but go upbeat, positive. It's really about being positive. And if you have anxieties about this, you don't share this with your child or around your child. That's one of the things that I notice parents do sometimes, is they'll talk about their own fears and worries in front of their child. And then it's low. Then the child's nervous. So getting to know the teacher, but not necessarily going by yourself with the child. Maybe bringing a sibling, maybe bringing a friend. Finding out who is in your child's class. I know we talk about the teacher, but if you can get the names of kids in your class that you can get together with as much as possible, that you know are the beginning buddies. And if you don't panic, because within the first few days or weeks of school, we're going to see who your child is connecting with the most. Maybe it's an interest. With younger kids, it might be an interest in playing in the housekeeping area or doing puzzles. With the older kids, it might be basketball. Who is your child a good match with? And we do rely on the teachers. But if there's a way to get into the school, bringing something that your child likes and knows. For some children, it's bringing a little photo album of their summer vacation. Sometimes it's the back to school interview questions and making it fun and upbeat. And the teacher can interview the child, talking about common summer questions. What'd you do this summer? The teacher can ask. Did you go on vacation? Are you excited about school? And for little kids, I would say exploring the room. walking the halls in school. As soon as you have the ability to get into the school environment, go. I call it walk the halls. Just go, see where the lunchroom is again. Even if your child's been there, walk the halls. Because 3 months of not being in school for little kids is like 2 years for us. So going, seeing the school, sometimes they clean it up, they do some repairs, they do renovations. This school did a bunch of renovations where we're having CommuniCamp. So things are different for us than they were maybe the last camp. So looking at the school, seeing where the nurse's office is, seeing where all the bathrooms are. And I know that's a question that some of you have brought up about toileting. So we're going to get into that. But really walk the halls. Look up maps on the website. Be really upbeat. The biggest message is upbeat. What are your thoughts with some of the things I just said?
I have the question. My son loves schedules. We have a August schedule up. He really loves telling time. He wants to know when things are happening. But then I'm like, how much emphasis I should put on it. And I always try to lean into what he likes. And he likes the schedule. He likes leading up to it. But I'm now I'm making this this big thing. And so I just feel nervous about that.
So one thing that I want to talk about is look, listen, and learn. And I didn't talk a whole lot about it yet at CommuniCamp. We're only on day 2. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I do talk about, and I want you guys to think about, and you've heard me if you've heard me talk, and you know this about me, look, listen, and learn is your way of looking at your child, listening, and learning from them. Mm-hmm. You just told me something really important. Your child loves schedules, likes to feel in control. Yeah. You don't fight that. Mm-hmm. That likes to know where he's going, when he's going, how he's going. It gives him a sense of control. Mm-hmm. And that's amazing because it's all about structure, consistency, routine, and predictability that most of our children do well with. Right. Sometimes it's us as parents introducing it to them because they aren't as vocal about it. They don't realize that yet. But go with that. Mm-hmm. I see that as amazing. I saw something on Instagram last night. I know that's right. That's where you go for everything. But it was interesting. There was a child sitting, and it was a little bit nervous. And he was sitting at the breakfast table. And you could see with the video, the child was nervous. I'm not sure what they were going to do, but you could see it said something my child was nervous. The mom puts music on in the background and just starts dancing really funny. And it loosened her up because her child was nervous. She was nervous. And so what happened was it was about how your change in energy reflects back or projects back to your child. And I can't tell you how so true that is. So the mom had dancing music and she started taking some of the kitchen materials, and all of a sudden her daughter comes in and she's dancing and laughing, and all of a sudden you see the child that was so nervous go like this, dancing and shaking a little, and then all of a sudden he starts to laugh, and that whole mood of nervous about whatever it was they were nervous about became, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging nervousness, but you can't sit in the anxiety and stress. So once you've talked about it and you've acknowledged it, because I'm always you acknowledge what a child says, but you don't feed it too much. Mm-hmm. What do you mean you're nervous? Let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. You say it in a way, hey, I can see why that can be a little scary or nervous, nerve-wracking. I can see, I remember when I felt this way, and you'd say that. Here's some things we're going to do to work through it. What are your thoughts if they're older? And you talk to them. But once you've discussed it, just be done with it, because you don't want to sit in it. You want to talk about it, acknowledge it, and as I say, move on. And that's what that mom did. I don't know what it was, but I loved it. And I'm I got to talk about this at camp, because that's what I tell families all the time. You almost have to fake it till you make it, because you can't sit in it. What are your thoughts with that, guys?
It's true.
Yeah. Can you think of times when you were kind of nervous and you felt, wow, I'm projecting my anxiety, even with treatment? When you're nervous about it, a lot of times families that travel, frankly, to the Smart Center, you're across the street, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever had a family across
we
the
can
street.
walk.
I know, right? Oh, wow. The talk of the town. Well, it's the talk of the town of the Smart Center, because most of our families drive really far, or they fly to us. And some fly every month. And if they don't want to do web, right? Or we're not licensed in their state and they don't want to do the coaching or whatever it is. So you're so close, right? But some families that are traveling are wow, we're putting all our eggs in this basket, and they're nervous, and they walk in with a flat affect. And my staff knows, because if you ever met Mary Kate, oh, she's here today, smile from ear to ear. That projection to you guys is so important. And when you meet our staff, they're smiling at you. They want to make you feel comfortable. And so we want to help lower your anxiety. But one of the things I teach parents is fake it till you make it. Even if you have to look at yourself in a mirror and fake the smile, your child may know, but really try to figure out ways. And that may lead to your own self-care. Maybe you need some support. I know you do, because a big part of CommuniCamp is offering you that and treatment. But if you're working with different therapists, you might need your own support if you're really in this thick of it, stress where you can't even think straight. So you got to think about that. But I would say it's a balance like a seesaw. It's not so much of the rigidity, but it's also enough that you've got it, but you don't want to sit in it. So I know one of your questions was the gradual release of control and support. I think you had said that. I think I understood that when you said it. It's you have to set the world up a certain way for success, but you don't want to be so rigid. So when you're charting the games, like little guys play games, bigger kids have their goals, not everything is a goal. So if you're bringing your child into communication, verbal communication, let's say, or just communication in general, when you see a neighbor or a friend from last year, or you're going to school and you're seeing another mother, you don't want to chart everything. It's not, oh my God, let's go chart it. Let's go, honey, let's go chart it. You want it to be natural so that you are providing the goals, the games, you're doing it, and you're naturally setting up the world for them. But not everything is charted. So when they're playing their games or they're doing their goals, that's charted because you want them to feel the success and see where they're at. So they're playing the games, and by playing the games, they're crossing the bridge. That's what happens. The older kids are doing the goals, knowing exactly where they're at on the bridge and why they're doing it. In the younger kid ages, 3+, 4, 5, it really depends. I would definitely say by 4.5, 5, we're working on the bridge and they know where they're at and they're playing their games. But for little guys, a lot of it's just immediate stickers for playing a game. And you know what you're doing with the game. Maybe they get 3 stickers for telling you and 5 stickers the way to heard. So you're changing the words and you begin to show them a bridge. But for some kids, it's just give my order game and they get stickers. And you know how to bring them, your child, into verbal communication or just even engaging. So they get stickers for playing the game. And as a byproduct of the game, they become verbal. That may be less of their involvement. So not to get too much off the topic, it's a fine balance. And whoever it is you are working with can help you with that balance, because parents sometimes feel I need to know everything. I need to know everything. I'm hearing this on the podcast. I'm reading this. I need to know, but I don't get it. And that's where your treatment professional comes into play. They need to help simplify this for you and put it together so that you feel calm about it. You aren't meant to know all this at all. Just like I don't know something else about a lot of things, but I can't parallel park for beans, but I'm not going to fight myself on it. I accept it. And sometimes I get out of it. Sometimes I do it, but
That's what
I
a
don't
backup
beat
camera's
myself.
for.
What?
That's what a backup camera's for.
Exactly. Or your other child that can drive. Oh my God, she's parallel parking. I'm not that bad. And when I'm by myself, it's scary. But and I'm not the greatest cook. I've accepted that about myself. So sometimes it's your stress. But this, in terms of understanding what to do, how to do it, where to do it, when to do it with your children, is not something that you're born to know. I know all this because this has been my life for 1,010 years. So I've had to learn it. But you guys have us as resources. So hopefully that's what's conveyed to you.
I think just to talk about the anxiety thing with what you're saying before, when we came last year and we went to the restaurants and the whole script and did you get that? And that's where my anxiety, I felt like, because it's like, oh my gosh, there's like another person. You want to control like everything because you have the script and if they don't hear it. So it's letting go of that and learn, but it's not, you can't, like you want control. It's this gradual process. And then it just becomes a natural thing. He's still not talking directly to them, but I don't feel like I put as much pressure on him. It's just the right amount. He knows they need to hear him. And then we'll work on the eye contact and we'll work on all of that. But I just remember last summer being completely different the way that I approached the outings. But the outings, that's what for us last year was, we didn't go back to the hotel. We went right out because I know him and he wanted to go to the hotel because he wanted to play the Switch or whatever. So it was, don't take him back, go out, do an activity, go straight to dinner, because otherwise I'm not going to get him back out into the public. That was huge for us last year.
Yeah. So
and that's the momentum thing I always talk about, which is key for him.
I think it is for sure. And goals and games are always needed. You can't get through this without exposures and goals and games where you know what you're doing. And I keep saying what, when, where, and how, because you need to know all that. You need to know how to do it, but it becomes very natural where you don't have to think about it as much. That if they don't answer, you bridge down to a choice. If they don't answer, tell me. And you just do it in a way. And then all of a sudden your child starts to do it. Depending on the reasons for their SM may hold them up. Their whys affect their ability to be engaged in social and verbal and expressive. So we have to accept that as well. One of the questions was, do you have any other questions about the teacher? Because 3 of you brought it up. What other questions in terms of getting to know the teacher?
And maybe this is, so some people like, and it's a comfort thing, right? So it's like some people he just like is not comfortable with. And I think that was like, there are just going to be some personalities that don't jive with him, but that's his teacher. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's, I don't know. I feel like in a strange place here where it's like, we have to learn how to engage with people we don't like, because like that's part of the world. But also you can see how like uncomfortable they are. And I think that's like something that I get stuck on a lot. It's okay. Yeah, I wouldn't want to talk to that neighbor either. Like how much do you push to be like, okay, we have to be neighborly, but also that person, I get why you don't want to talk to that person. And I think that in a school setting too, there are people that, yeah, he's going to talk to. He talks to them a lot quicker. And then there's other people that are overbearing, louder, are like forcing him to talk, and he's not going to talk to that person. And so it's just like this balance of, yes, I want you to be able to like be in the world, but also, yeah, I get it. I don't know. And I think that's where I get stuck a lot of times is like where to push, where to let back, like where to be like, actually, you just don't like that person and that's okay.
So I appreciate like everything you're saying because everyone here can relate to this. I want to be careful with don't like them and I don't want to talk to them versus their lack of comfort and their lack of skills.
Okay.
Because what I've seen in older children, it becomes an excuse, and some parents, at least when I meet them, are like, she doesn't like that teacher. She doesn't like that child. She doesn't like that school. She doesn't like this. Mm-hmm. Is it so much they don't like them, and then maybe that neighbor perhaps? But a lot of times what I've learned is it's more the child isn't comfortable.
Yeah.
And we can't control, as kids get older, who's in their class. Every teacher, when they go to middle school, they have 10 teachers? Mm-hmm. So you can't. Right. So we have to teach them that it's the skills a lot of times. So if the child, I don't like that kid, is it they really don't like that kid? Or is that there's something they're not comfortable with? Maybe they're a really loud, boisterous child. Mm-hmm. So we talk about that. So because I want to be careful that these kids just don't say, I don't like this person. Mm-hmm. Because that does become a habit, and not that any of you are this kind of parent, but I'm amazed how many parents come here and they're like, yeah, she said she doesn't like her teacher. She chews gum too loud. This is true story. Or when the teacher walked by, my daughter said she purposely hit her shoulder, and I called the school. Like they're listening to everything their child is saying without realizing, no, I don't think so. Right. I think a lot of this is your child's uncomfortableness in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, speaking of uncomfortable, she doesn't want to come here. This is not her jam of meeting new people. So every day so far, 2 days, right? She's come in here. She has to physically be held by somebody. This happens in preschool too, where she knows the teacher, she knows the classroom. She's been there 3 years. And it's become maybe a habit now where she knows, like she'll lean against my body, she'll grab me, all the things of attaching to me and not going as soon. And I've come into the habit where I'm like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to hold her. Otherwise she will not let go of me. And then I have to walk out while she's crying. So it's such a hard habit. I don't know how to detach from her. And I have this feeling it's going to just continue into kindergarten as she starts. So that's a concern of mine, is how I'm going to do all the things of warming up to her new teacher. We have meetings scheduled for her to see the new school. But it's become such a habit now where she like knows that before she leaves me, she wants to do this whole grabbing onto me, crying.
So this has become a habit, because I can say in the room, she's fine.
Yeah.
And she's having a great time. I was in there yesterday.
Yeah.
So this is a habit that we have to break, but you can't put pressure on a little child.
Yeah.
So it's how you also, it's also separation anxiety. That's a process in itself. That's having to deal with that. Because my guess is she's very attached to you in general. And that separation, especially a Monday morning after a holiday, beginning of school, is hard. One is, this is a little bit separate, so I feel like I'm a little off topic. helping her integrate with other individuals when you're not there. So she starts to build her confidence as a person without mommy always navigating everything.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you are, and you're like, no, she goes to grandma's, she's out with other people, I drop her off at play dates. That's great. School, for whatever reason, whether it was a specific situation with school, a specific teacher separation, created this habit.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would say is, how are you handling that? And you said something to me that I was thinking about is, if she needs a routine, because remember, giving her control in an out of control situation, what is that routine she can do? Whether it's hug mommy 3 times, kiss mommy 3 times, and then let go. How can you navigate it? I'm not saying we need to discuss every aspect of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So to give you all these kinds of dealing with separation is sometimes it's coming up with some routine for the drop off, because you not go to school, but there's things we can do to help you feel comfortable. I've had kids have to carry a little stuffy that they carry in the beginning, and then maybe they put it in their backpack, or a little picture of mommy. Lots of things like that. I've had a kid wear a little Band-Aid with a little picture of mommy on his finger. Just something as a step, and eventually, believe me, they're not using it. But a step for you would be talking to your daughter because she's having a good time. And that's where scaries of 0 to 3 for little guys or 0 to 5 for older guys is really talking about it. When we first went, it felt like seemed like it felt like a 3. But while you were there, you seemed to have fun, and it probably came down. And so sometimes giving them words for their feelings and helping them realize, oh, it wasn't so scary. So as children are doing their game charts, we often will say, hey, that seemed less scary, or wow, that seemed a little scary. We'll do it different next time. So I think it's really navigating that, because that sounds very habit, but I love that you already noticed we're going through this thing. And for me, that thing is what I was thinking you need to do. Create that ritual for a drop off. And you will be amazed how when she goes through, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, you forgot the 3rd kiss. And you're making light of it. All of a sudden you start to see the separation.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah. I just wanted to come around to my teacher question.
Yeah.
Which is that my kid has been at the same school since she was 18 months. So this is her 3rd year, I think, in the same school. And my older daughter went all the way through, and I work in the same building. She doesn't have problems separating, but she's going to have the same teacher.
Any sort of pointers you might have on how to shift the dynamic with the same people?
Yeah, no. Are there any?
Is it the same kid? One or two same kids, and some of the kids from the younger class are now moving in. It's a 3-4-year-old class. Now she'll be in.
Does she ever say to you, I don't talk to my teacher?
Yeah.
She does?
Mhm.
How
I
much?
don't talk at school.
I don't talk at school. And she's not even 4.
She'll be 4 in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, so she's 4. Almost 4. So I would say, and I don't know the answer to this, how much do you guys talk about talking? How much were you talking about talking?
Not much.
So she's still putting a lot of emphasis on talking. So she feels talking is the end goal. I don't talk in school. Again, remember I was talking yesterday, and I'm like, the child that says, I'm 7, I'm going to talk, and everybody like,
She does say things like
yeah,
that.
exactly. They all do. And it's like, all right, let it be. And then when you're 7, we all get everything ready for the child to talk, and they don't, unless they've been working on stuff. I would say if there's there's a couple things going on. One is you talk about comfort and acknowledge her fear. If a child says, I don't talk in school, what you could say is, you may not be that comfortable yet. We're working on helping you become comfortable. I try to shift that word talk, which is the end all and be all, the big thing that because maybe it's not you, but maybe it's a teacher in the past. Maybe it's that teacher who's very focused on, come on, I know you can talk.
Yeah.
I know I've heard you talk to your mom, things like that. And that might be in your case, because you were just saying that this is another mother, if the people are listening. It's possible that some of her resistance separating is because of that fear of needing to talk in an environment where your child wasn't comfortable talking yet. So I don't know how much that plays in if you're seeing separation issues in other areas, but I've had kids in my practice where there's so much emphasis on talking that they don't want to go to these environments, and it's terrifying because the minute they're separated from their parent, there's that talk, you got to talk, please talk. I'll give you a sticker if you talk. I hate that. If your child is not ready to verbalize, they're not even engaging, they don't have the comfort yet, how can we expect them to talk? To me, one of the reasons these kids are making such progress here is because we give them that connection and comfort, and we literally decrease the expectation in the beginning, but start to do the nonverbals, the handing, the taking, comfort building. We don't force eye contact. It happens when it's natural, unless a child is on the autism spectrum. Then it's like you start to see that's eye contact's really hard, but that's comfort based. If a child is not comfortable, eye contact is just not there. Once I see the eye contact starting, it's my message. I can look at the child a little more, but I'm not staring a child down in therapy. I'm looking at the game. I'm looking at the goal. I gaze up to the child down, because the more you do that, the lower your expectation. For you, with the question regarding school and the same teacher, what I would say to you is, how can your teacher be educated on the things to do now that maybe she didn't do last year?
Teaching that teacher, having somebody educate your school, whether it's us or somebody else you're working with, do a school training. It's amazing how that school training is so critical. When we first started doing the research, we didn't do the school training. We only treated the parents and the child. And we saw the huge progress so quickly in the world, real world, and at home with the child. But there was very little progress in school until the school was trained. Once we brought the school training in, boom, because they need to be educated. And it's not just your teacher. It's the music teacher, the art teacher, the gym teacher. It's whoever is interacting with your child needs to know what to do and what not to do. And for little kids, sometimes it's as simple as don't ask open-ended, thought-provoking questions and saying you need to talk. That could be your biggest headache.
Yeah.
It's how do you engage the child through play? How do you ask questions? When do you ask questions? Where? Which leads me to, because everything leads me to something, to talk about when a family says, we have an IEP. We have small groups in the room, small groups out of the room. And Misty, you know what I'm going to say. It's, what are you doing in the small groups? How are you questioning? When are you questioning? Who? You see what I mean? It's not just that you've got small groups. How are you working those small groups? So for me, the number one thing is, one, you're working with your child on all these games and goals, and that you're doing your goals, their games, and your child's going to make progress in all these other areas. That will feed over to school, assuming this teacher has some education, and then training your teacher in the proper way. Okay. And if there's another teacher in this class that's new, maybe focus a little more on that teacher so it's not as conditioned as it is with your main teacher.
It's two of them that tag team, and they were both in the
Oh, okay. The good news is your child's young enough, and children that are little tend to bounce real quickly, much easier than the older kids. So I want to get into the toileting, because a couple of you talked about toileting, and one of the questions was, we're transitioning into school, and my child really had accidents. One, I want you to walk the school, see where the bathrooms are, but go with your child to the bathroom. If you're the kind of parent that always is with your child, even at home in the bathroom, or if you go to a restaurant and you're in the stall all the time, start to pull yourself back from that, where your child is more independent using the toilet at home. If your child doesn't ever even go alone at home, start shifting. Maybe it's the other parent that's doing it if there's another parent involved, that it's not always you, but you've got to get your child independent and toileting at home. Assuming that's happening, walk the halls, see where the bathrooms are. Now, if your child isn't comfortable with others, social anxiety, one of the characteristics of an individual's social anxiety is something called paruresis, which is shy bladder syndrome. I'm not comfortable going to the bathroom around others. I don't want anybody to hear me go to the bathroom. They hold it in. Shy bladder syndrome, paruresis. That's common. Even eating around others can be difficult. So if you have a child that's not eating around others, that's also a social anxiety trait. Sensory, the loud toilets at school. The toilets at school are power toilets, usually. And so for our sensory kids, that noise. Okay, so what I would say is, why is your child not going in school? If it's urinating because they're young and they're starting to toilet train, that's a whole separate thing. But if it's really about, I'm afraid to go to the bathroom, maybe there's a separate room they go to. Maybe you do, not to encourage the dependence on you, but maybe you do need as a first step to go into the bathroom during school in the morning so your child goes. And if your child's only there 3 hours, maybe you come in at the end and your child goes as a first step to get your child to at least go to the toilet in the school. And then you start weaning yourself away. And sometimes we do it where the parent is in the stall with the child, if that's how you do it. Parents outside the stall, parents 5 feet away, 10 feet away, outside the room. That may be what some of you need to do. And we have charts for that. Or the teacher has to take that child at a separate time. One thing we're not talking a lot about are IEPs in this particular podcast, which Jen Brittingham will talk a lot about school. The last day, the last section, we do that because we want to teach you the concepts. Then we get into school because that's the last thing and often the things you guys really want. So we have that at the end of CommuniCamp. But we talk about it throughout, obviously, and you'll know so much more when you go into the school section from all the things we're teaching you. But some children need IEPs. So if toileting is an issue, eating is an issue, they're not really functioning well in school, they're really not communicating in school, maybe they're wise or sensory, timidity, whatever it might be, they may need an IEP. And if that's the case, then you need to approach the district and request an evaluation for an IEP because they may need extra supports that typically in a classroom. And when your child is still in preschool, it's called preschool child with a disability. Don't get panicked over that term, but preschool child with a disability is okay to get the accommodations you need in the school and possibly the interventions. Some schools, you need an IEP to get even small group work or to get somebody extra in the class. Sometimes it's just a 504. And depending on how your child is functioning, you may not need that. It might just be a wait and see where we do basic education to the school, see how the child does, and then we may need to dive in. And if your child goes to a private school, you don't get those. You might get services in the public school, but most families don't want to take their child out of school to have services. But in preschool, there's a lot more they can do with preschool child with a disability bringing services in versus once you're in kindergarten.
I just follow up there. My kid does use the toilet independently, and she's at school for 5 hours. Since I work there, I take her in, she uses the bathroom, and the 2 times in the last year where she refused to put on a diaper and wanted to try underwear, I take her to the bathroom like 3 or 4 times a day. She can't let it out. So like the paruresis sounds really appropriate there.
Yeah.
And then she has an accident on the floor in the classroom. So I have her in a diaper and they change her in the middle of the day. And then whoever picks her up takes her to the bathroom and she goes to the bathroom. So she has the ability to do all these things, but she's so anxious, even with the teacher not in the bathroom and no one else in the bathroom, she just can't let it out.
What's been happening at camp?
She was wearing a diaper in the morning.
Okay.
They brought me in at lunchtime. I changed it, and then she did underwear the rest of the day. So I guess I'm just wondering, does anyone go to kindergarten in a diaper? And what happens?
Well, she still has another year.
She does.
And I want to help you with your own anxiety over this because I get it. We all are. I don't even want to talk about kindergarten. She's just turning 4.
It's true.
And my suggestion is let's take a wait and see and work on things now because children are completely different in 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. And Misty knows because we've worked together. Your son is a completely different boy than he was when I met him.
Yes. And that was just November.
Right.
But what he was a year ago, I said in basketball, my husband had to go on the court and practice with him. And he was and he went to an NBA game and played the halftime show in December, whenever. So that's a really big step.
Yeah.
And that's included in all of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I want you to not worry so much about kindergarten, but let's see what we can do now because the questions and the concerns you have aren't going to necessarily be there for next year. So I think a big key for her is lowering her anxiety and working on anxiety lowering techniques to help her. But I would say definitely getting her working on that with the toileting within school and even seeing with a timer how long she can go and then coming in and letting her be successful rather than hit or miss. So if over 2 hours, some children, I hear what you're saying. So at home, she doesn't wear a diaper. It's just school.
No, only in school.
Yeah. So I think it's really working on that. And I can hear the anxiety there. And I think it's a work in progress. In other words, we know where her starting point is and we have to work on that and maybe getting her into a pull-up and not a diaper and really helping her because it sounds like it's not even coming out in the bathroom.
It's not coming out of the bathroom.
So you going with her multiple times where she goes, is she going with you?
Yeah, but I don't go to her classroom in the middle of the day.
You may need to go to get her to go with you even in the beginning of the day where she's peeing on the toilet.
I do.
And she goes? Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe once at least getting her to go. This is like a whole consult in itself. I wish it's just so much to it to get the steps going. What I mean is there's so much.
Yeah.
That we can't focus all of it on the podcast. But does that give you a perspective a little bit.
The relax and wait and see what happens in the next year is helpful, and maybe stop spinning my wheels about, should I get her an occupational therapist or should I whatever. Just,
is it possible she's going in school, so she's going? It's not like she's not going.
she can go in the space. It's just when her comfortable people
So what
are not
I would
around.
say is she goes with you, and maybe one of the charts, because she's almost 4 and she's bright, is showing her a chart where she sees she goes with mommy. Then you take 3 steps away, and she sees herself now. She gets points for going when mommy's 3 steps away. And then she does it, and then she goes when mommy's 10 steps away. So she starts to go when you're not there, because it might be she's not comfortable with the teacher taking her. So
That's exactly what it is.
So instead of the teacher coming and replacing you, you've got to take that. Remember, one of the things, like some of the parents were saying, it's steps. Mm-hmm. I always say to go from the first floor to the second floor, you're taking those steps and you're cutting them up. And by the time you get to the 5th step, you're flying. But I keep looking at Misty because I work with her so closely and her son, and I see him here at camp and how amazing he's doing and talking and asking questions. Mm-hmm. And having met him not even a year, like last November, he was a totally different kid. In such a short period of time, he's just doing so amazing. So I know these kids can do this. But I think for you, I'm happy to share that chart with you of mommy's here. And it's that visual chart of knowing where she's at, then the next step, then the next step, and then next step. And all of a sudden she's going with you out of the room. And maybe the teacher needs to come in and replace you outside.
Yeah.
And maybe she needs to go when there's no kids around. Maybe she's a sensitive child. I reviewed her paperwork, and she's a very sensitive child. Yes. So having a lot of people around may not be great for her, and that's part of that social anxiety trait. Right. Are there any questions you guys have that I didn't address in the discussions? The new friends, areas of interest, really right away, whether it's academic interests as children get older, someone that's loving puzzles for the little guys, loving numbers for the little guys, really also where the teachers are saying, you know what, your child's really super smart. This other little boy also has really high interest and very bright. I'm going to pair and group your child. I will say that worked for my Sophie. My Sophie is still super smart. The teachers found these kids that were, because she was bored in kindergarten and preschool, and we found kids that she had interest with, and still to this day, 30 years old, she's still friends with them. Mm-hmm. Somehow that bond. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's going to happen. But I remember the teacher going, even when she was in middle school, like she always bonded with the kids, and it was always like the science kids. Mm-hmm. So she on her own was able to find that, because that's what gave your child, just like you. When you find parents with similar interests here at camp, it's your kids with selective mutism and your ages. But it's really about finding kids with interest that, and as children get older, we can't set up get-togethers and play dates. And it's not happening as much post-COVID. But the teachers have to find kids with similar interests to pair and group your children with. And ideally, those are the kids you focus on get-togethers with. That's what it is. And then using those same 3 to 5 kids you pair with, group with, and sit with. And those are the children your child becomes the most comfortable with. So if you're doing pull-outs, those are the kids you're doing friendship-y groups with. Now, it may not always be, and you don't ever want it to be one child. You need at least 3 to 5 kids they're pairing and grouping with. Now, in the younger years, it's 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Because if that one child is absent, your child's going to freak out. Mm-hmm. And it's also not fair to always have that same child. Mm-hmm. So the teacher naturally makes this happen without putting too much pressure on other children.
If I can speak to that because with Lachlan, he had one speaking friend. So we just put it all on Lachlan. And when Lachlan wasn't there, he didn't want to go to school. Yeah. He regressed immediately. Lachlan went away for the week. It was just like right back to,
And then what happens when, maybe not in this case, but Lachlan, let's use him as an example, makes a new friend.
Right.
Woo!
Yeah.
Talk about sense of abandonment. What do you mean Lachlan has a new friend? I'm his only friend, because he doesn't have the skills yet maybe to make other friends. So it's our job as parents and our job as teachers to pair and group with more kids so that your child doesn't have that necessarily glue. And the same with you for get-togethers. Even if you hit it off amazing with one parent, you've got to get other parents there in some capacity. And sometimes play dates are hard. It could be meeting at the school grounds after school on the weekends where the child plays. A really great thing is going to the school playgrounds, because that's where they're at during recess. And you may need to have another staff member, IEP perhaps, for preschool where they're guiding the get together or the interaction on the playground. Because some children, and this was my Sophie, she sat underneath a slide. She didn't play with other children. So we needed another staff member to gather some kids together, and maybe your child needs to do a scavenger hunt or duck goose if they're little. Maybe the older kid's playing basketball. Teacher says, hey, come on over here, Leo. Come on, Lachlan. Come on, James. Come on, Robert. Let's go play basketball. And the teacher leads it. Don't wait, facilitate. Your job, don't wait, facilitate. The teacher's job, don't wait, facilitate. We can't wait for our children to say, hey, I need new buddies. Rotate one out, rotate one in. Make sure you ask me questions that are choice-based, but I need visuals because for me, when I get nervous, seeing it helps me. Please do that. They're not going to do it, and they're not even going to write a note about it. Although, when I have children that are older, I say to them in therapy, if you could say anything to your teacher, what would you want them to know? Or friends that are working on adding them to the club. We did this with Leo. How could we tell your friends that we're going to play these games or do these goals? And for children that want the help, especially as they get older, it's wonderful. We're not necessarily sending those notes or sending those emails to the teacher, but it gets it out. And some children draw pictures to help themselves express how they're feeling with their friends. And it's amazing what you can learn from your children's drawings. It's amazing. So what other questions do you guys have? Because we're pretty... I know, I got to wrap it up. I'm being told I have to wrap it up. They're going to get a hook and hook things out. How are you guys feeling? Is this helpful? Did you feel good about it? I did. I love talking to you guys. Every little tidbit helps, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not one thing, it's lots of things. So it's not one thing you do, it's all the things that helps bring down the anxiety. It's or the inability, and then the strategies you're implementing as you're doing it.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. You got to eat. You got to eat in the room. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.